Hi there, it's Michael Crawford from Mac Photography, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your metering sensor inside your camera and how important it is for the operation of your camera. The metering sensor inside most Nikon cameras, at least, is an RGB sensor, which means it's got red, green and blue sensors, so it picks up color. Now this sensor is very important for operation of a number of systems within the camera, and you may not realize it, but it's actually doing a number of things before you actually make the exposure. What it does is it assists the autofocus system to select the autofocus point. So it does this by looking at the autofocus area, and it decides what's in the scene. Particularly if there's a face in the scene, it'll recognize a face, and it'll put the autofocus point on either the face or an eye. So it's quite intelligent that way. And of course, the better your RGB sensor, the better the autofocus system will work. It also assists with the auto exposure system. So if you're using, for instance, aperture priority, it will determine the correct exposure for your photograph. If you're using shutter priority, it does the same thing. And if you're using program mode, it will be doing all the calculations for your camera, determining what sort of scene it's looking at and what sort of exposure it should be setting the camera up for. It also assists the TTL balanced flash system. So you've heard of TTL balance. So when you're outside and you've got, for instance, you got your flash on your camera and you got a backlit subject, and you take a photo and it comes out nice and perfect. You can see the person's face instead of them being just a black dot. That's because the system is working in conjunction with the metering, and it's actually determining the correct flash output despite the fact that there's strong ambient light behind the subject. Also, it will obviously determine the correct white balance for your photo, which is hugely important, as we all know that if you get the wrong white balance, your photo will have the wrong tones. It will, it will look off. It might have an ugly shade of green. Even it could be too yellow. People's skin colors can be wrong. So that's all very important. One of the important things to note is that, at least in the Nikon system, the better the RGB sensor, obviously the better the autofocus system. So the D500 and the D5, they both have 180,000 pixel RGB sensors. That's the highest RGB sensor that Nikon has made. I'm not sure about other systems. I'm just looking at Nikon. That's what I concentrate on. That's what I use. And also coming up, the D7500 is going to have 180,000 pixel RGB sensor. It's such a big mouthful. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that's why I think it's going to have really good autofocus, and it's something that we should be watching, that camera. I reckon it's a lot better than what people are expecting. Then they have another going down the scale, but certainly no lesser cameras. The D810, the D800, D800e, the D750, they all use a 91,000 pixel RGB sensor. So that's about half of what these new D5, D500, D7500s are using. Half the pixels. So you could imagine it's getting half the detail of the scene. Then we have, as we go down to a 2000 pixel RGB sensor, which is used in the 7000 series cameras, the 7200, the 7100, the 7000. It's also used in the D5600 camera. Interestingly, I did a bit of research before this and found out that it was used in that. And then when you go much further down the scale, down to the D3400, the latest 3400, I looked up that too, and very surprisingly, that has a 420 pixel RGB sensor. So you can see the difference there. Obviously, that's the bottom of the line Nikon camera, one of the cheapest ones you can get, and it's using an RGB sensor of 420 pixels. 420. So basically, the Nikon lineup at the moment is going 420 pixels, 2000 pixels, 91,000 pixels, and then 180,000 pixels. And yeah, autofocus performance is significantly affected by this RGB sensor. And as you can see from the lineup, autofocus performance improves the higher up the chain you go with your RGB sensor. So yeah, I just thought I'd tell you about that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate with my D800e just how the RGB sensor helps the autofocus system determine if there's a face in the scene. It does this obviously by looking at the scene and determining if there's a face, and then trying to put a focus point onto that face. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate how the RGB sensor will focus on my son here and not on the car, and it will move the focusing point from my son's face to the car, depending on whether his face is in the scene or not. So this is one of the very important fundamental things that the RGB sensor does. So what I've got here is my camera set up, and I'm gonna just use a point and shoot to record through the eyepiece. So I'll just get you to bear with me here while I set this up. Okay, now stand up straight, Tim. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna focus. I can't see if it's got focus. 1 second. Oh yes. Okay, I hope you can see that on the video. Anyway, it's got focus on his face. Now cover your face with the ball, Tim, and you'll see that it moves focus to the car. And now drop the ball, Tim, and you'll see that it pulls the focus back to his face. Move your head over that side, Tim. Yeah, no, just out a little bit. Yeah, just there. And it's still grabbing focus on his face, and just over a little bit more. Stop there. And it's still on his face, and then go out a little bit until I say stop. A bit more, stop. Okay, with him on the edge of the frame, the focus points don't go out there, and you can see that it's focusing on the car again. So keep making your way in slowly, wriggle across, and there you can see it's grabbed him. It's recognized the face and it's focusing. So that's how your RGB sensor in your camera recognizes scenes and will focus on them accordingly. Okay, so I hope now you have a good understanding of how the RGB sensor works in tandem with your autofocus system to track objects and people in your frame, not just doing the metering and the white balance, but also providing these fundamental functions that the camera does. I hope that's been of help to you, and I hope that you may consider the RGB sensor in your next camera purchase, and perhaps understand the price points that these cameras are put at and the different type of technology that's put into them. Okay. I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.